I believe this crypto bull run will be dominated by two big narratives, ZK technology and modular blockchains. But these two concepts are very confusing for the everyday investor. Most people only know that zkSync and Polygon are the ZK technology providers, and Celestia is the leader in modular blockchains. But what do these terms actually mean for new project builders and the end user? To explore this, I invited the co-founder of Manta Network to the channel. Manta is not only the first blockchain built using Celestia's modular stack, but also one of the pioneers to build a ZK EVM. I'm excited to introduce Kenny Lee, co-founder of Manta Network, to explain why ZK and modular are two of the biggest trends in this cycle. We will also discuss why Manta Network is one of my conviction bets for ZK blockchains this year, and how ZK and modular combined gives Manta a unique advantage in the layer 2 space. Hello, Kenny. How's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dennis. Doing well. How are you?
Amazing. Really glad to have you on the show today. I've been super excited to talk to someone that's actually deep builder in the space for many years that understands all of these complex solutions, and more importantly can explain them to a retail audience, to their community, of what this actually means. So a lot of times, I find it just so hard to come from an outsider perspective and trying to become the inner bridge. And I'm not sure, half the times I'm kind of confident in what I'm getting right, but it's always good to directly get it from the expert.
Thanks, but temper your expectations here.
No worries. We don't want super technical stuff anyways. I think you're the perfect guy for this to explain these concepts. Awesome.
Sure.
Okay, so of course, on the agenda today, we're going to get into Manta. We're going to get into a lot of the layer 2 landscape, a lot of the newest technologies, such as modular, Celestia, restaking, ZK solutions, and why they are so popular this year for layer 2 blockchains. And let me just kick things off with a brief introduction of Manta. So Manta today is the 6th largest blockchain, layer 2 blockchain token, and the 3rd largest layer 2 token in terms of total value locked. So Manta today sits at $1.83 billion of total value locked, and here you can see it's way up there in the rankings. And you guys really exploded in these in this new wave of layer 2s. So maybe give us a brief introduction of what Manta is and how it's different from the older generation of layer 2s.
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, Dennis, the whole idea behind Manta Network is a little bit different. But yes, at the end of the day, Manta Pacific is Manta Network's layer 2. We are the fastest growing L2 on the market today. And as part of that, it's been just an exciting, amazing journey over the past 3 years building this with 60 people all around the world. We've got about 180 different ecosystem projects live on us today. And, one of the things that really sort of make us a bit different than other L2 approaches is that we take a modular approach to building our L2, and happy to get into more detail about what that means and everything.
Of course, I think this is the most exciting part because from my understanding, these older generation of layer 2s, they really were the pioneers in like first to market. But when it comes to certain design choices that they could have made, we're starting to see the grass kind of coming through with, once these guys really scale to huge amounts of transaction or huge amounts of throughput, they don't really have as much kind of control in the use case that they target. They're still kind of just one design choice that they had made like 2 years ago. Whereas with modular, I think the overall idea that I get from it is that you can choose different technology stacks where you have your data availability, where you have your consensus. And so this allows you to be a lot more adaptable in the use cases that you target. Is this kind of correct for modular? And, maybe give us what it means to be modular in the first place.
Yeah, sure. And I think, Dennis, that was a really great description. And, just to kind of highlight a point here is that I think back 2-3 months ago now, maybe, I'm not sure, kind of lost track of time here, but there was a period of time where there was this inscriptions craze, right? And so inscriptions, they started off on Bitcoin and then they made their way over to Ethereum and all these L2s. And we saw the inscriptions hitting each L2, and subsequently we saw a lot of L2s stop producing blocks because the throughput required for inscriptions was just, especially with the demand that was there, was just way too high. And we saw inscriptions on Manta as well, but Manta actually continued to produce blocks, and there was no sort of downtime as a result. And also the gas fees, were not tremendously spiked. And this was as a result of this modular data availability approach. Because we used Celestia at the time, what it meant was we now had much higher throughput than before as an L2 when we first launched. When we first launched, it was just OP Stack, but then we later integrated Celestia. And I think that kind of highlights exactly what modular approaches are like. It means that you're able to take the latest technologies available and plug and play, add them into your infrastructure in order to provide more value to your audience, right? By actually leveraging Celestia, over the past 30 days, we were able to save our users $1.5 million in gas fees. And so over the course of a year, right, that's like 18 to 20 million in cost savings, right? Gas fees alone. And so we're saving users $20 million a year by leveraging Celestia. And so being able to take this modular approach and say, okay, Celestia is extremely valuable for our users, and plug it into our infrastructure and look at other things like yield-bearing assets, looking at other things like Polygon CDK for ZK EVM, being able to take all that plug and play, that allows us to continue to derive more and more value for our users over time. You also hit upon a point earlier about how the trendsetters, the original L2s, right, came out and they took more of a monolithic approach. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. It's just you work with the tools you have at the time, right? And so now and it's really amazing how fast the space moves, such that now we're at a time where you do have solutions like Celestia, which honestly just launched mainnet in December, right? Which was like 2 months ago. And so, all these sort of solutions that weren't available before are now currently available today that we can actually leverage. And so I think a modular approach in 2024 for L2s makes a lot of sense. And I think that's going to be the trend that we're going to see moving forward.
Very cool. Okay, so there's kind of something that I just learned from you there as well that I think is very, very useful. So Celestia really started this modular sort of design paradigm for layer 2s and blockchains in general, where you take different sets, different areas of the blockchain stack, data availability, your execution, and kind of mix and match them so you can offer the best tailored solution for the type of application you're trying to target. So in this case, when Manta integrated Celestia, so you guys basically, by using Celestia as the data availability, the main benefit there is much cheaper costs. Is this correct?
Yep.
Okay, very cool. And then, but the even bigger sort of design choice is going modular, where you can take, Polygon CDK, you can take, other technologies that are coming up in this whole like layer 2 stack, such as restaking, and offer them in your network when, you're launching your first mainnet, and then eventually, you can have more upgrades, and these can all be plugged in later. So this is the kind of modular part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's honestly, I don't see why any networks wouldn't go this approach anymore, because we're seeing just so many different new layer 1s and layer 2s pop up now, and if they're just copying the older code base of the existing guys, I mean, that's no longer interesting. Now you really have to target a specific type of applications, and I think this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and also, it's interesting that you bring up copying other code bases, because not only is it, not interesting as you described, but I think history proves that it doesn't work, right? Because if you look at just okay, I guess I'll just kind of backtrack here. So 2013, right? You've got Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden you've got these forks of Bitcoin starting to emerge, even earlier than 2013, right? And these are supposed to be alternatives to Bitcoin that are supposed to be better than Bitcoin, right? Whether you reduce the block generation time or you increase the block size, you see results such as like Litecoin, you see results like Digibyte, and then like, eventually like even Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Silver and all this other stuff. All of which are forks of Bitcoin continuing to build monolithically, but modifying some type of feature in order to compete against Bitcoin. And then as a result, what you see today is that obviously Bitcoin is still the dominant player, and all of the alternatives that have forked and tried to compete could not secure that market share that they were hoping for. And then you go into 2017 and you see this explosion of ICOs from the Ethereum craze. And as a result, you see all these competitors coming out to try to attempt to be, the Ethereum killers by also forking EVM or modifying some level of code in order to allow people to be more flexible on the programming languages, also block speed, et cetera, et cetera. All of which, we've got like EOS, we've got Neo, we've got all this other stuff, right? Like that kind of came out of that. And then they also built monolithically, weren't able to adapt to user needs, user demands that consistently change over time in this space. And as a result, right, like now we still see Ethereum holding that market share and all these other competitors kind of falling by the wayside. And I think for L2s now in 2024, we're seeing the exact same thing, right? Like, I mean, most L2s these days, right, like are going to be either OP Stack or Arbitrum Orbit or Polygon CDK. And they're going to make minor modifications and try to compete on those modifications. But at the end of the day, I don't think that the developers really care tremendously about those modifications, right? If it really was that amazing, then applications wouldn't be deploying on every single L2 there is, right? And so the fact that they're deploying on all these different L2s kind of indicate that, okay, maybe the developers don't see a difference and the users don't really see a difference either. And so as a result, I think we're repeating the same sort of pattern of behavior as 2013 and 2017. The main difference here and the opportunity to escape that sort of rabbit hole is modularity, because now we do have the technology that allows projects not only to keep up with the value propositions that users are looking for over time, but also the ability to pivot and continue to optimize their resources and their time if necessary.
That would be a very interesting concept that I'm going to start referencing. So,
sure.
It's people always love new technology and shiny new projects in crypto. It's a repeating, concept that we always see cycle after cycle. And now, especially in infra, like you said, Bitcoin copies, Ethereum copies, and then even like people try to fork other stuff. And always the newer stuff, they have a little bit better tech and a little bit newer coins, so people hop on. But eventually they know that they'll have the same fate. But now with modular, we're starting to see finally a difference because, like you said, Celestia just came out of mainnet in December, and people are already able to integrate as long as you went from a modular approach. Now we have restaking coming out, and people are realizing the power of Eigen, and by taking a modular approach, you can easily integrate. And I know you guys have tried your technology with OP, and you are able to experiment with ZK as well to offer essentially the best solution that people actually want. So that just makes a project, an infra side, much more user-driven and, like you said, like adaptable, and whatever developers and users actually demand. We want cheaper fees, or we want more, higher security, or something of both. You can actually make it work instead of hard forking and going through the same thing again and being retired by someone else. Yeah, really cool.
Right. And you mentioned what users want, and I think that's a really good point as well. I think we're also at least on Manta's side, what we're trying to do, and I think we'll start seeing this trend a lot more in the next year or so, is infrastructure on in the Web3 side, right, has traditionally been confined to R&D, right? Like they're building cool technologies, and we like cool technologies in Web3, but at the end of the day, a cool technology does not mean it's a cool product, right? And so what we see is this proliferation of technology and research and a lot of amazing, new features being able to be added into the infrastructure layer as a result. But how do those new features translate into how users use them in a much easier way, in a more secure way, et cetera, et cetera? I don't think that has been fully thought through yet. And so being able to take this sort of modular approach allows teams to also focus less time on doing all the R&D and reinventing the wheel themselves for each and every project, and focus more on thinking about how to productize those features to the actual users in the most seamless way possible. Because I do think even on the infrastructure level, infrastructure providers, we have some level of responsibility to also enhance user experience, right? And so, with Celestia as that example, being able to reduce gas fees by like 80, 90%, right? That ultimately translates into a much better user experience for the users on the application level, because they don't have to worry about paying an arm and a leg in order to make a swap.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'd love to see where things actually go. Like people, infra, let's say infrastructure providers throughout this, the longest time has just been kind of choosing what their chain is made for and choosing what their infra is made for. We are the gaming chain, we are the, DeFi chain. But then, people were just basically forking Ethereum and making it proof of stake and having the exact same parameters before. But now we finally have the choice where, if you're building a chain truly for high frequency, for gaming, zero cost transactions, you can take certain design choices in modular and make that work. If you want to be kind of more heavy DeFi focused, you can make that work. So this is definitely the cycle of real applications, and applications fitting where they need to and where they are best treated. Okay, cool. So I would love to get into the topic of ZK a little bit as well. So I understand you guys first started as OP stack chain on Manta, and then now you're transitioning to a ZK chain using Polygon CDK. So I love ZK. I think ZK will be one of the hidden gems this year in terms of narrative. It's finally coming to fruition. People are actually able to build on ZK chains now. So what prompted you guys to make this choice? And are you bullish on ZK overall for this cycle? And what do you see for ZK coming up?
Yeah, I think that, we've always been bullish on ZK. So we actually 3 years ago as a ZK project, specifically building around on-chain privacy, private on-chain identity. And so from that time, we've actually built a lot of different circuits, which are just, ZK lingo for applications, or ZK parts of the applications. So we built a lot of those. And in fact, a lot of those are also available on Manta Pacific as what we refer to as universal circuits. So developers can actually deploy ZK-enabled applications using universal circuits on Manta Pacific. And so, like always been bullish on ZK. I think when people think about ZK nowadays, there's basically two categories. One is more so on the scalability side. And that's where the rollups come in. And one is more so on the application side. And this is where the on-chain privacy, confidentiality, identity, et cetera, kind of play a role. For the ZK rollup side that we're looking into, obviously more so on the former, the reason is, again, going back to user experience and enhancing that user experience. And I think there's two factors at play here that kind of contribute to that decision. The first is security. So when you're using an optimistic rollup, right, what we are concerned about is definitely security at the end of the day. I think every infrastructure project, their first priority is going to be on the security side. when it comes to an optimistic rollup, right, the transactions are all assumed to be correct, and everyone's a good actor until you withdraw. And so that's why there's that challenge period of 3 to 7 days. During that time, then anyone can look at your withdrawal request and say whether or not that's a good, like, that's valid. But other than that, every other time people make transactions and stuff, it's just assumed that they're good transactions. That's why it's an optimistic roll up, right? We're optimistic about the transactions happening on the chain. When it comes to a ZK rollup, right? I guess another term can be a pessimistic rollup, but that just doesn't sound so great. But a ZK rollup, right? Like, people are just, and not people, but the chain is constantly checking and verifying. Every single block that is settled onto the L1 is verified, and as a result of that, right, like, you have no challenge period, because we know that once you actually withdraw your assets, those are valid transactions that led to the eventual amount that you're withdrawing. And so as a result, there is no challenge period, which is great, because for users that are getting in and out of the network, they can come in, flow out. And then on top of that, when they're in the network, the security is greatly enhanced.
Makes sense. And this has been, one of the earliest dreams of Ethereum L2s. I think, when Vitalik first, kind of estimated the future of layer 2s and future of Ethereum scaling was always going to be ZK, but it just seemed like it was forever. I think he even quoted like 2028, 2030 or something. But now we're actually seeing, even this year, like ZK chains, layer 1s and layer 2s, supporting full mainnet applications. People are able to deploy it and use, directly plug into their MetaMask. So now there isn't really that much of a difference anymore of how quickly you can deploy and get one of these to mainnet. So I think people are going to quickly realize that, well, we have a better, more secure solution than Optimistic. Sure, Optimistic was first, but now maybe we should choose ZK and actually try it out. And I can't wait to have that thesis be proven this year. I have made a lot of bets on ZK this year. So
nice.
Very cool. And speaking of ZK bets, so you guys also have a ton of ZK related applications on your ecosystem as well. And similar to Celestia, by staking Manta, you can get airdrops of these application tokens in the Manta Network ecosystem. So I do want to highlight a few as well, a few projects on my radar personally. So if you guys aren't following Manta's latest threads on Twitter, you definitely should. So there are projects like Zeroland, Layerbank, Shoebill. These are things that I have all used. And I think what's cool here is, if you are bullish on ZK this year, of course you can get infra tokens from ZK narratives, but there are also a ton of applications that specifically target ZK, and probably because in order to deploy your smart contracts on ZK, they're a little bit different from Optimistic, and then also they're probably similar ecosystems. So these DeFi applications really target most of the ZK chains, which is really good for investment purpose. So for example, like people always get into top decentralized exchange, top lending protocol, DeFi infrastructure in a new chain, a new narrative. So I think what's cool here is you guys are one of the first to come to mainnet to launch your own token, and people can get airdrops in these projects by staking Manta. You don't even need to be bullish on Manta exclusively. As long as you're bullish on ZK, you can get basically exposure to all of the top ZK applications that are coming up this year. And that's what I found to be really cool. You can't do that on other chains so easily, because there are just not that many ZK focused chains live yet. So any alpha that you can give us on the Manta or ZK ecosystem?
Yeah, I guess two things. One is, just around the Manta ecosystem, we do have additional campaigns that are being set up right now that involve ecosystem projects, and also, rewards from those ecosystem projects as well. And those should be coming out probably the end of February, so very, very soon. So that's pretty cool. And then the other part is, we on the previous sort of topic around ZK, we touched a lot on the infrastructure side, but I think another thing is the application side for ZK that we also see a lot on Manta is, what are the use cases that are actually coming out of this side, the application side, right? And originally, we saw a lot around like private payments. We've got Zcash, we've got Tornado Cash, we've got all these sort of private payment systems. But now what we're seeing is this next generation of applications. And I think that the next generation of decentralized applications will inevitably have some type of ZK enabled features in them, to the point where ZK is not as cool as it is today, because it will become a commodity. And I think that's where it should be headed. One example of this is a game called ZK Hold'em, which is deployed currently on Manta. So ZK Hold'em is the only on-chain Texas Hold'em game in existence today. And it sounds like a very simple thing to do, but it's really not, because it's very different than like a typical game, such that, let's say, for example, Dennis, you and I, we're playing chess. If I say knight to d7, you know exactly where the knight goes. I know where the knight is. Anyone who looks on chain can see the state of the game and see where all the pieces are, right? This is a complete information game because everyone knows all the information available, and then you make your decision from there. So chess is easy to deploy on the blockchain, but Texas Hold'em, poker, is not easy to deploy on the blockchain because it's an incomplete information game. You and I need to somehow agree that the cards in our hands are the cards in our hands, but we can't show each other the cards. And we don't know what's in the deck, but we also have to agree that the deck is correct. And someone who looks on chain at the whole state of the game can't just see all the cards and all the deck, because then all of a sudden it ruins the whole game. But the problem here is that when you post data information on chain, it's fully transparent. And so you can't just, create a card game and tell people don't look on chain and just play, between us, right? And so what ZK Hold'em does is they use Manta's universal circuits to enable that ZK component to allow them to actually build on-chain Texas Hold'em.
Very cool. That's a piece of alpha that, only ZK can unlock, and we can talk all about, speculating on, certain ways to get certain types of DeFi tokens, but these are things that truly, we should see a lot more, since ZK technology is finally coming to mainnet, and people can actually build on these infra. So I have played like maybe, just kind of semi off-chain crypto, gambling, crypto poker, but that doesn't beat, a DeFi poker at all. So this is basically a way for me to play Texas Hold'em fully on chain.
Yeah,
that's quite cool. So I've gotta try this out. I mean, that's definitely a piece of alpha there. So if I see any, let's say, Gamblefy narrative or anything that's requires, like you said, like half information to be revealed between both parties, that kind of application, definitely look to ZK. Okay, so I did want to, so one thing that I am very bullish on ZK for this year is the upcoming Ethereum upgrade. So I think the Ethereum core devs have slated for even second week of March, like the third week of March for Denkun upgrade. This is the next major upgrade for Ethereum. And the really cool part here is that the EIP 4844 proposal is finally going to go live and be included. And this benefits all layer 2s in terms of lowering gas fees, introducing blob in the blob storage. But this specifically benefits ZK chains a lot because ZK chains have been like historically very expensive. So are you guys, bullish on this? And I guess, are there any like related types of catalysts coming for ZK in this year?
Yeah, so definitely really excited about 4844. So because we actually use Celestia for the data availability side. And 4844 actually impacts data availability on Ethereum severely, which is where a lot of the gas fee savings occur. We are actually getting a head start in the cost savings. And so that 1.5 million, right, like that's currently available on Manta, not elsewhere, because Manta is using Celestia for that DA. And I think once 4844 goes into play, then we're probably going to be seeing that type of transition in cost savings across all L2s, right? And so this is definitely an advantage we have right now as an early mover. But once 4844 goes into play, then I think it's going to become a commodity, which, again, at the end of the day, I think commoditizing infrastructure, for better or for worse, Manta is in the best scenario for the industry. Once 4844 goes live, definitely we'll be taking full advantage of that as well. We are still going to be using Celestia as the main sort of source for DA. But at the same time, we do have fallback. And so what that means is that if Celestia ever has any issues, if it stops producing blocks, if somehow our network can't reach it, then it falls back to Ethereum. And so that allows Manta to continuously run despite any sort of hiccups. And so right now we fall back. The gas fees would, jump tremendously. But in the future with 4844, with that fallback, it's something that, we can smoothly transition in between without any sort of noticeable detriment to the user experience.
Very cool. And I think this benefits ZK overall, and I think that's ultimately, moving past this initial kind of, let's say like even like early technology problems of like, okay, we still have to worry about fees. And once people realize, okay, ZKs are just as cheap after 4844, we can really talk about, the next steps of ZK, and people can actually try all kinds of ZK applications. Okay, so bit of a last, I guess, interesting question here. So what do you see kind of long-term for Manta in terms of staying ahead of the game and being competitive in the layer 2 landscape? Do you have any kind of like strong competitors that you see in the market? And what is Manta's key strength in the market compared to other L2s?
Yeah. So, in terms of competitors, definitely, I think there's a lot of competitors in this space. The L2 space is just a very contentious space. A lot of talent is flowing into L2s. There's the giants in the space, right? Arbitrum, Optimism, right? There's up and coming players such as us, zkSync, Scroll, Linea, right? So, it's a countless sort of number of different players that are available today and in the future. But I think that, when we do look into the future of L2s and the future of L1s and just the infrastructure level, I think for me at least, it still goes back to commodity. I do think that at the end of the day, everything's going to be a commodity. And in fact, that's going to be beautiful for the Web3 space, because what you really want to do is focus more on the scalability rather than, being so devoted to one particular brand. Right. And it's like in Web 2, no one says, oh, I'm only going to use your application if you deploy on AWS, because everyone in Web 2 deploys on AWS and Microsoft Azure and DigitalOcean and all these others. I think that should happen with L2s as well. I do think that 3 to 5 years down the line, one single L2 is not going to be the solution. Maybe one single brand of L2s will be the solution, but at the end of the day, I think that the aggregation of L2s is going to be the way to go, because we've already seen, even with like the inscription experiment, that L2s, despite how scalable of a solution they should be to L1s, is still not the end game, because there's still severe problems with scalability on the L2 side. And so the question now is, how do you get that next level scalability? And when you look at other models of how other industries work, such as cloud computing, the way that they make scalability infinite per se is not through giving you one single server and saying, this is the best server there is. This is the most powerful server. You can run like, Microsoft Word and Google Docs and all this stuff in it. They give you a bunch of servers and you run your application on top and you load balance all the user requests across a bunch of different servers. And I think that's the same that we'll be seeing in L2s, right? You'll have a bunch of different L2s and you see applications being abstracted away rather than deploying independently on each L2. They deploy separately, and then they're able to leverage the scalability across all the different L2s in order to achieve whatever sort of user scalability they need. And so in that world, right, like where does Manta sort of play a role? I think that Manta's role in this world is to make sure that we can continue to provide under our brand, right, our sort of project, the best in class technology, right? Where others may not be able to keep up because of more of a monolithic approach, Manta, we can still be flexible in thinking about, what the new value proposition for users in those days are, be able to pivot, adopt, adapt, and deliver value to the users.
Definitely. That's honestly, I've been following you guys since very early days of the project with Manta Atlantic, with Polkadot, and that's definitely the approach I love, which is, staying ahead of the game, actually being adaptable and not staying in very strong idea of what the layer 2 and what the technology should be, and you're only going to build this. Instead, follow the trend, build what is currently the most feasible, currently the most widely adopted, usable for users and developers. And this ultimately long-term make you guys actually survive and being able to, onboard developers and onboard new users when the time actually comes, which is like, it really shows in this part of the cycle. And so this is why, like, I'm quite confident in, participating in Manta and having my, my coverage of Manta and being ahead with the Manta ecosystem. I think, whatever the type of solution is, modular is just kind of a buzzword for a lot of people, but it is truly the kind of DNA of you guys. Like, whatever type of technology is going to be most usable for the audience and for our users, you are going to adopt. And ultimately that will make you guys, continue to stay ahead of the game.
Thanks for your support.
Yeah. I don't think people like truly realize how difficult it is to like, it's all fine and good to overpromise a lot, and this is the way to do things, but we always see that playing the other way around. Like, it might sound big initially, but when it comes to actual adoption, things always shift. Even with Ethereum and how they choose to go, like, there's so many different ways L2s have been made. They ditched the whole plasma and they went rollups, and rollups they're not sure how to do. So I think modular is going to, like, people that are not choosing to build modular ways are going to be left behind. We're starting to see that now. Okay, Very cool. So I would love to finish off with maybe one or two fun questions that are outside of Manta.
Sure.
So I've been following, a lot of the NFT and kind of gaming entertainment wave coming up. So, even watching Pudgy Penguins overtaking Bored Ape Yacht Club again by floor price, it's pretty insane to see. So are you in NFTs at all? Are there any interesting NFTs, maybe on the Manta ecosystem, or do you hold any NFTs, any collections?
Yeah, I'm definitely very degen in the space. I have Pudgies. I have little Pudgies as well, and several other NFTs. And on top of that, yeah, Manta's got some. There's this project called Manta Society that was I think they launched their NFTs a couple of weeks ago. Definitely got some of those as well, just to kind of support the community. And then on top of all that, I'm also a big meme person. So I guess yeah, definitely into the meme cultures as well. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, half my time is like figuring out memes. Those are usually people underestimate memes. Like, memes are community, and
Yeah,
community is everything, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And then maybe just the last little bit, we love to finish off with this. Are there any new narratives or interesting narratives that that you think are very novel and very exciting for this upcoming cycle? Maybe aside of layer 2s that we have already mentioned.
Yeah, I think that one of the most exciting narratives for me is, and no one really talks about this, is aggregation. I think that the horizontal scalability side, it's not really sexy. I don't even know if aggregation is the right term because before it was referred to as like shared state. And I'm sure that the terminology will continue to change, but I think like, when it comes to scalability, that's probably the way to go, at least in my book. And so really excited and looking forward to, seeing that play out more and more. I saw Polygon started talking about aggregation very recently. This is a discussion that I've had with their team, months ago. And so, really excited to see people start thinking about it in a very serious way. Apart from that, I mean, like, I do think real world assets are also very exciting because one of the beauties of blockchain is like, I think people underestimate just how powerful it is to be self-custodied. And we kind of take it for granted at this moment. But once you're able to start self-custodying real world assets, like that's, I think, going to be a game changer because it creates extremely liquid markets for things that traditionally have been not liquid due to bureaucracy, due to custodianship, due to whatever it may be, right? Like, the simple idea here is like now instead of timeshares being sold by Hilton, it's like timeshares being sold through tokenization. And it's just like, that's pretty cool. And so I do think RWA is going to show the world how powerful blockchain is. Yeah, and those are probably two things I'm looking forward to.
For sure, love those. I mean, I've been following Polygon Ag Layer. I think people don't even understand. Like the simplest term is, the omni-chain approach finally coming true, where you actually don't know which layer 2 or care which layer 2 that you're using. As long as they're Polygon CDK, you could be on Manta, you could be on another chain, and you don't even need to switch chains. I would love to even kind of having like a real user understanding of what that looks like because it hasn't existed before. And I'm super excited about that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we will end it there. So thank you for coming on the show today, Kenny. It has been a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Dennis.
Yeah, of course. And I've been following Manta for the longest time and really excited to see you guys not only launch very successfully, but also still maintaining that user base and maintaining that DeFi exposure, and now getting into the ZK narratives, Celestia narrative, and restaking, and the whole beauty of modular, where you guys can continue to evolve and move with the market and serve the applications and the users in the best way possible. So, and of course, love your detailed explanation of this whole concept of modular. I have a lot more digging after our conversation as well. Awesome. Okay. Thank you again for coming on, and looking forward to chatting again in the future. And if you guys aren't following Manta, make sure to check them out on Twitter and follow Kenny on Twitter as well for all the latest alpha on Manta, on ZK, and on Modular.